The hook I am using is a Firehole Sticks number 516 in size 10, and I'm putting a 2.8mm slotted tungsten bead on it in a silver color. This bead will want to rotate, and you really want to get that slot to fit correctly in the hook. So I'm adding a few wraps of .010 size lead wire on the hook, and pushing it up into the slot in the bead. This will not only stabilize the bead, but it'll also put some more weight on the fly. The thread I'm using is Vivis 140 power thread in hot orange, but hot pink or some other bright color could work as well. Start your thread behind the lead wraps and make some loose wraps over the wire. Then make a few tighter wraps to cover and smooth out the lead. Pull out some pink ice dub and prepare it by pulling apart in your fingers a few times. Tie this in right behind the lead wire and in the center of the bunch. Then pull the forward-facing fibers rearward and tie those down as well. Now make a dubbing loop and bring your thread up to the bead. Pull out a fair amount of chartreuse ice dub, or in this case, I'm using starburst dubbing, and align the fibers as well on this. Then span it out a bit. Put this dubbing in your dubbing loop and make sure it's evenly spaced along the loop. Then spin your loop to create a dubbing hackle. Now it's important to pick out your dubbing loop to straighten any of the trapped and twisted fibers. Now make touching wraps up your hook with the dubbing hackle, pulling all the fibers rearward with every wrap. Capture the loop once you reach your thread and trim off the waist. Now pick out the fibers once again to make sure there are no trapped fibers. So I find it helps to wet your fingers and pull these fibers rearward to get them out of the way. Now make another dubbing loop. Take some red rabbit dubbing and pull apart in your fingers a few times. Then span them out a bit and put this in your dubbing loop. Make sure your dubbing is evenly distributed along the loop. Then spin up your loop to create a rabbit hackle. Now brush out this dubbing loop with a stiff toothbrush or some Velcro. Don't worry about pulling out some of the fibers. There's enough here to do what we need. Now make some touching wraps with the hackle, pulling all the fibers rearward with every wrap. So you want this bushy, so even wrapping on top of previous wraps is okay. When you're happy with the collar, then capture the loop and trim off the waist. Make a few wraps in front of your dubbing. You want this area to be about flush with the bead head. Then when it's flush, wet finish your fly. Pick out your fly including the rabbit fur. Then wet your fingers and stroke the fibers rearward. Now let's select an eye. You want it large enough to cover part of the bead and the collar, but not too large either. So I find that this 5mm sized eye is the right size for this one. Put your eye on the side of your fly, where it's not completely covering the bead. Also, you want this to ride low, so make sure your eye isn't sticking up past the wraps on top, or in the direction where the hook point is. Once the eye is placed correctly, put another eye on the other side, making sure it's even with the previous eye. I like to angle the fly downward a bit to ensure that the UV resin doesn't bleed into the hackle too much. Before putting the UV resin on, make sure the hackle doesn't have any hairs sticking up. Then fill the space between the eyes, on the top first with resin. Let the UV resin settle in order to fill the gap more. Then cure it with your UV light. Now do the same thing on the underside of the eyes. You might need to add a little bit more resin on the underside so it's not so flat. Now for one final step, paint on this ultra thin resin over the eyes. This will ensure that the eyes stay on, and it'll also give it a nice glossy finish. Now let's trim our fly. Fan out the dubbing a bit, then make an angled cut rearward from the top of the fly where the hook ends to about the middle of the tail. Do the same thing on the other side. This dubbing can get unruly, so I like wetting the dubbing, then make a few touch-up trims. And there we have it, a bright and flashy jigging type fly that works well for panfish. The way that this is tied, it will sit pretty much straight in the water, and when not moving, the fly doesn't dip down or up too much. Also has a nice jigging action as well when stripped quickly. And when fished on the bottom, it rides hook point up, so there's less worry about snags. But where I feel this fly shines is its ability to jig up and down. Many times when fishing crappie, you find structure and just jig straight up and down waiting for them to bite. So I feel that this fly will be the perfect fly for that application. But of course, it still swims nicely and has some good movement when stripped along. Well, thanks for watching. If you like this sort of thing, please subscribe. Check the description section for a list of materials I used on this fly. And if you would like, you can support this channel by purchasing one of my fly boxes. They're waterproof and really high quality. I will see you on the next video. Now you go catch some fish.